Welcome back to the Farm Show on Westplex Talk 1045. It is Saturday, February 28th, 2026. And as a reminder, not only can you hear our show at 10 a.m. on Saturday, but a replay comes Sunday at 8 a.m. And speaking of replays, you are listening to the first ever best of edition of the Farm Show. We are playing select clips from some of the best interviews that we've done over the past 7 months. And one of the ones that always comes to mind for me is a conversation we had immediately after the Missouri State Fair with an award winner. Without further ado, let's get right into our conversation with the great Kaylin Bade.
Kaylin Bade, her husband Kevin, and their kids Dylin and Lydia were named the 2025 Franklin County Farm Family at the Missouri State Fair's Family Farm Day. Kaylin joins us on the phone today. Kaylin, welcome to the Farm Show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm always impressed when I hear people say that they are a second or a third generation farmer, but you have those folks beat by a mile. So tell us a little bit about your family farm and the generations of your family that have worked that land.
So I'm actually the fifth generation that has worked the property that is our farm. My great times four uncle purchased the property in 1898. In 1912, he built the barn that we still use. And in 1917, he built the house that my husband and I and our kids live in. Obviously, it's been remodeled a few times. But then he and his wife did not have any surviving children. So whenever they were getting older, my great-grandparents actually moved in with them. And my great-grandma's name was Lydia. That's why we named our daughter Lydia. So they moved in with my aunt and uncle and took care of them until my uncle passed. And the agreement then was that my great grandpa would give my great aunt $2,000 for the property, and the machinery and the animals and everything went to a different nephew. So it was passed down with the contingency of, you're going to take care of this and pass it down as well. But he did give $2,000 to my aunt for it. After that, then my great-grandparents had one child, my grandma. And then it went from her to my dad, and dad still farms with us. In 2016, he passed the cattle operation on to us, and then we've taken over all of his rental property for the row crops.
So you mentioned cattle and you mentioned row crops. So when folks take a look at, and by the way, we've mentioned this on the air previously, but folks can check out your operation at Havenvale Farms on Instagram. Tell us a little bit about how diverse your operation is. So you've got row crops and cattle, and then what else do you put together?
So we also have a few chickens just for our own
amusement.
Sure. And then we also, I grow all of, or as much of our own food as possible. And then I can or freeze or preserve in some way all of those items. So we have two really large gardens in addition to the cattle and the row crops and the hay crops.
Doing research previous to having our conversation, there's a lot of great coverage in the Washington Missourian paper about some of the awards that you've won. You were named one of the top 7 teachers in the state of Missouri. The Washington Missourian piece from 2023, one of the pieces they wrote, told the story about what I think is the most fascinating aspect of your educational career, which is that you originally were an English teacher. And then the way I read it, Kaylin, you pitched the idea of teaching a class that was a little bit more hands-on. And can you tell us a little bit about what that class is and what you teach now?
Sure. Yes. I taught English for 7 years. At this point, whenever I tell my students that, they don't believe me because all they see me is their ag teacher. Um, but I had a group of students approach me in 2017 asking if I would start an FFA chapter here at the middle school. They had high school siblings that were in FFA, and so they knew a little bit about it. And it was actually for a project for their computer class. The assignment was how would you make Washington Middle School better? And so the teacher knew that at that time I was the Missouri State Alumni President for FFA. So she sent them down to my room and had them pitch the idea to me about, do you think we could do this? So then I thought about it, talked to our principal, we got things rolling. And then a few years later, after our administration changed a little bit, my principal asked if I would be willing to teach the students everything I do at home, was her words. And I just thought that that was so awesome. And of course, I said yes. So the first year I did half and half, just to kind of see how things would go, if there was, what the reaction would be as far as enrollment of students and that kind of thing. It was very obvious that it would definitely be feasible to turn into a full-time position. So I guess the ag department at Washington Middle School was then born. And now I teach a seventh grade agriculture class, which all of the seventh graders have to take unless they're in band and orchestra, because then that takes up their elective. But it's part of their art, music, that kind of facts, all of those, that circle. So the seventh graders have to take my class, which is extremely beneficial because if there is any stigma against, an ag class or whatever it is that we're doing in here, that gets broken pretty quickly and the kids see, wow, this is really cool. I also have an eighth grade farm to table class. So within that, we grow things with the intent of then cooking them. So it's start to finish. We do canning, we do different things with meats. And then my other eighth grade class is just general agriculture. And for that one, since we have a whole semester, we do math for the trades, drafting, woodworking, plant and animal science, historical agriculture, floral design, and ag business.
When you look at those three different options there, I'm going to put you on the spot, Kaylin.
Okay.
Of those three, not what are your students' favorite projects and activities, but of those three classes, what projects in those three realms are your personal favorite?
So I really like the farm to table class when we make teacher meals. So like we'll put all of the different things that we've learned all together and make meals, and then the teachers will purchase them and we'll bring it to them during their lunch shift. Because then the rest of the school gets to kind of see what we're doing down here. I also, well, the students' favorite, I know that's not what you said, but is
I want to
woodworking
hear.
for
What is it?
kids. It's woodworking, but they also really like it whenever we do butcher deer in class and then learn how to make it into deer steaks. And we make bratwurst by putting it with pork, and they learn how to use the grinder and the stuffer, and they really enjoy that as well.
For folks who want to read a little bit more about this, by the way, I would suggest you go to emissourian.com. That's the website of the Washington Missourian. And if you look up Kaylin Bade, you'll see some of the news coverage about this, and particularly the ability of teachers to come in and order the food, which I thought was an awesome program.
Mhm.
Earlier, you mentioned FFA. And in that same kind of vein, I know that you and your kids are deeply involved in 4 H. What are some of their favorite parts and experiences that they've had thus far?
Well, Lydia is still a Clover kid, so what she is able to do is kind of limited until she turns 8. But this is Dylan's sixth year in 4-H, and his projects right now are forestry, bacon, electricity, beef, and foods. And so I think that his favorite has been forestry because we now, because of 4-H, make maple syrup every year. Um, And then also with foods, we now make apple butter every fall. And then he took a class through 4-H at Williams Brothers here in Washington, and made bacon there, and then took it home to us, everything he learned. And when we butchered that next February, our hogs, or the hogs that we buy for butchering, I should say, he did it start to finish, the bacon. And then that year he won grand champion bacon at the Washington Fair, which was last year. So, and his best friend got grand champion this year of bacon. It's really, really a lot of fun. He's learned so much through 4-H. It's been incredible.
That's awesome. Do you well, actually, before we get to a final question, another put you on the spot question, I'll ask about your experience at the Missouri State Fair. I know that you got back a little bit earlier in the week, but can you tell us about your experience and what it was like?
Yeah, so we went up pretty early Monday morning, just so that we could have some time at the fair as a family. My kids have been there before, but not recent enough to really remember it. And we also took my parents along because, without them, I would not be where I am.
Sure.
So we took them along as well. And so we just enjoyed the fair and the exhibits and the different events, and walked through the different barns and looked at the animals and watched some of the shows, and tried to do well, which one do you think is the best, and then Monday evening was the banquet for the farm families. So they brought us to the director's pavilion at the fair, and we had supper and a short program. And then that's where they gave us our plaques and took our pictures and stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've seen some of your pictures, and for folks who haven't written it down yet or entered it in your phone, go ahead and open up Instagram and go to Havenvale Farms on Instagram, and you can see pictures from the ceremony there. I believe on Instagram you can also see a classroom wish list. Is that correct?
Yes.
For anyone who would like to take a gander for their own classroom, or if anyone would like to purchase from the wish list. Now, final question, Kaylin. You've been generous with your time this morning. You have your hand in a lot of operations. You obviously have row crops and cattle and chicken, and you also happen to hold a full-time job. How do you do it? Are you hyper organized? Is your husband hyper organized? Are your kids just have you cloned yourself? How do you have this ability to execute on all the projects that you have?
So I actually get asked that question a lot. Um, I would say that a lot of it is that we do everything as a family. So, with the gardens and the farming, everything, it's all four of us. Granted, the 6-year-old can't help that much, but she is definitely right there with us. And my husband's always said that the best combination of careers is a teacher also being a farmer, because I, quote, have the summers off, right?
That's a great thing. I found from personal experience, teachers love to hear that.
Right. Yeah, it's great. Um, but anyhow, so I don't know. I have goals that I want to meet and drive to get there. And I just don't get a lot of sleep, I guess. And my house is sometimes a mess.
But you prioritize the big things, right?
Yeah.
Well, again, for folks who want to follow along, you can follow on what is your Facebook handle?
It's just my name, Kaylin Bade.
Okay, I know, and that page is public, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then also on Instagram, Havenvale Farms. Kaylin, I
Hmm.
appreciate you taking the time out. I know that it's a ridiculous week for you because you not only were in Sedalia, but you made it home. And as I understand it, you also are prepping for the school year that starts on Monday at the
I sure
Washington
am.
District, right?
Yep, I sure am.
Well, that may seem like a cliffhanger. When we left Kaylin, she was getting ready to start the school year. But what has happened since then? Thankfully, Kaylin gave us all an update on her Instagram account, which you can follow at Havenvale Farms. As mentioned moments ago, it's Havenvale Farms. Kaylin wrote, "It's been a while since I've given an update on the WMS Ag Department happenings, so here we go. We started the semester with soil and plant science all around. Seventh graders have been learning about soil types, soil composition, essential plant nutrients, and soil amendments through lots of dirty labs. Now they are each creating a case study for a different crop that is edible by humans or livestock that solves a farmer's issue with specific nutrient deficiencies that each student has chosen. Eighth graders had a quick refresher from their seventh grade ag science course about sexual and asexual plant reproduction, explored how parthenogropy works and how seedless fruits are cultivated, how to select seeds, and yesterday planted seeds for the grow towers, herb pots, and the garden area. The greenhouse has been installed and will be ready once the electric and plumbing are finished. The new chicken house has been set and is also waiting for electricity and the run to be added. We've had a great start to the semester. Again, you can follow more by going to Havenvale Farms on Instagram. Now, before we go, I want to play a clip from a fantastic conversation we had with the Missouri Beef Industry Council's Allie Crick. Have a listen. Can you tell us about the Beef in the Classroom program?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So, our Beef in the Classroom grant program is what we call it. It is designed for FACS teachers, which would be our family and consumer science teachers. It is a grant program where they are required to give a pasture to plate presentation provided by us to their students. We find the importance in that so our students understand where their meat is coming from and they don't just grab it off the grocery shelf without knowing, right? They're also available to request materials from us as a council. A couple examples of those materials would be beef cuts charts, miniature cookbooks, and grilling guides. And after both of those processes, the teachers have the opportunity to apply for reimbursement when they cook with beef in their classroom. So traditionally, our FACS teachers have a built-in kitchen in their classrooms, right? And giving those students the opportunity to cook with beef firsthand isn't always the most economical when you're working on a budget, right? Especially in today. So we want to help take that financial burden off those teachers as well as build that background of beef into those students' lives. The financial side of that, we award up to $400 per semester per classroom. And that is actually a maximum of $2 per student in each of those classrooms per recipe.
That's awesome. What an amazing opportunity for the teachers to be able to get a little bit of help to do that. What are the most popular parts of the program for kids? And the feedback you get, what do kids enjoy the most?
Yeah, I think that being able to cook firsthand with beef is very eye-opening to those students, as well as some of that information that is coming from that pasture to plate presentation. Through that presentation, we actually start with a little bit of beef checkoff knowledge, as well as the entire, let's meet the cattle producer, let's talk about the USDA inspected plants, and then let's talk about the nutritional value of beef. And I honestly think that entire process is very eye-opening to what we would consider specifically our inner city students. They don't get to see that every day, but so that's very eye-opening as well as I mentioned, cooking firsthand with beef. You know, not everybody has the opportunity to grow up in a house where they get to learn to cook with materials that are a little bit more pricey.
One of the surprising things I saw, and I have to admit, I was one of those kids in class that kind of read ahead, Allie. I was one of those annoying kids. But in doing some research for this, I saw in the comparison and some of the materials of just the comparison between, for example, a fat and protein comparison between chicken and beef. And as a guy that's grown up eating both, and I feel like I know a little bit about beef, even I had no idea of the nutritional facts. And I think it's fascinating what kids can learn in a classroom that many of us adults don't even know.
Yes, yes. I actually was teaching the pasture to plate beef in the classroom lesson this morning for a cooking demonstration and seeing some of the light click on in the high school boys' brains that 6.5 tablespoons of peanut butter holds the same nutritional value on the protein level when it comes to just 3 ounces of beef. That was pretty eye-opening to me too.
All right, we are right up against time. Thank you for joining us today on the very first ever Best of edition. We'll be right back here next Saturday at 10 a.m. with a replay Sunday at 8 a.m. right here on Westplex Talk 1045.